Hello and welcome to the MB Om podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the MB Om podcast. My name is Amanda and I'll be your host for this and all episodes of the show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by OfferingTree. When you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to build your digital presence, it can be daunting. First, you might need a website. There are a lot of great tools for building websites like WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. Then you need a way to email your students. Again, there are tools for that like MailChimp and Constant Contact, but that's another account to pay for and a password to remember. Then you need a way to schedule and register your students. Again, there are tools for that, but it's another account to create and pay for and another password to remember. Oh wait, how do I integrate my scheduling tool with my website? There are so many things to remember. So instead of putting all of this stuff off for another day because it's too daunting, let me tell you about a better way. OfferingTree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one account, you can create a website in minutes that has your schedule built right in. They also have email marketing tools to collect email addresses, send newsletters, and automated emails to your subscribers. It all works seamlessly together with one account and one subscription. To learn more about what OfferingTree can do for your digital presence, visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. OfferingTree has been supporting MBOM for close to a year now, and I not only love the product, but I also love the people. The team at OfferingTree is super awesome. They are a small business just like you and me, and they have great customer service for anything that you need. And OfferingTree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners, so be sure to visit offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive your discount. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you in part by FavYogis. The FavYogis app is back with new features for teachers that let you create and manage your own private classes while making payment and registration a breeze. Do you have regular private clients? Make life easier with autopay. Forget about remembering to Venmo, or if you're Canadian, try some sort of e-transfer or PayPal combination. You can use autopay to enable repeat payments and keep calendars in sync with classes. Google Calendar integration automatically updates teachers and student classes when you make changes. It's still just your yoga. Teachers add classes, students add teachers, and teachers and students stay connected. So head on over to the App Store on your device and find FavYogis. It's FavYogis. On top of that, it's totally free to download and give a try. So head on over to your App Store and find FavYogis. FavYogis. Oh, and make sure you use code MBOM and let them know that I sent you. All right, now on to today's episode of the podcast. I am very, very excited to be joined today on the show by Nubia Teixeira. Nubia is a Brazilian-born yogini, dancer, and author. She is actually the author of Yoga and the Art of Mudras. And when I heard about that, I was like, I have to have Nubia on the podcast, because mudras is something that probably, like you listening, you learned a little bit about in maybe your 200 hour or your 300 hour, but it always feels a little bit challenging to integrate into class. At least that's been my sort of feeling. It's the type of thing that I have so much respect for in the yogic culture and the history and philosophies of yoga, and it's something that I would never want to integrate into classes incorrectly, and something that I don't feel totally confident in teaching myself. So on this episode of the podcast, Nubia and I dive into her story, how she went from, living in Brazil to living in the United States, how she's built a really successful business for herself, as well as, what it was like to author a book. And then we also dive into tips for the mudras, how to start learning about them, how to start integrating them, and how to start integrating them correctly. So if you've been interested in learning a little bit more about mudras and how to integrate them into your classes in line with the traditions of yoga, you're going to love this episode, and Nubia's super awesome. So without further ado, here she is. Nubia, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you here with me.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
And where are you joining me from today?
We live, me and my family, we live in Fairfax, California, Northern California.
Amazing. That's great. And I'm so excited for our conversation today. I feel like we're going to touch on a ton of really great stuff, but I want to back up. And can you tell me how you first got into yoga and a little bit about your yoga story?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I started practicing yoga when I was 16, back in Brazil, São Paulo. That's where I'm from. And back in the day, I thought I was going to pursue a theater career. That's what I was into. And suddenly I noticed that in my little pile of books, I had more yoga books than theater books, and that I was spending more time practicing yoga than practicing for my theater. And then I realized that the call was to turn towards the yoga path. And I looked into some trainings that were being offered back in the day, that was in 91. And I found a course in Sao Paulo on the University of Yoga. It's not really considered to be a per se university, but they call Universidade de Yoga. And I entered this 4-year training. So in this 4-year training, when I was 17, I started. After the first year, you could begin teaching level 1 classes. And that's when I started teaching yoga when I was 18. I started teaching at the school for a group of beginners, and it was wonderful. It was life-changing for me to have that opportunity so early.
Wow, a 4-year program. I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Do you feel like that's sort of having had that experience? Do you feel like yoga teachers now should be taking trainings that are more in-depth like that?
I would like people to have, experience of living yoga deeply before teaching yoga widely. But the world is different right now, and the way that these courses are presented are different. I still try to offer my trainings year long, which is not like every day. We meet every week, once a week, and then for our in-depth twice a month or once a month, depending on how many hours I'm doing, the 200 or the 500, because I believe that it takes time for you to really assimilate, to put in practice, and to just allow the yoga to transform you from inside before you go out and transform the life of others. So I like the idea of long length trainings, but I feel like right now in this time and age is not part of a reality.
It's kind of interesting because it's so normal for yoga teacher trainings, I feel like, in North America to be like, the 200 hours is standard, and then you can take the 300 hours to get your 500 hour. But it's so normal to do a 4-year degree, or, even longer for things like becoming a lawyer or a dentist or a doctor, or even for like a business degree like I have and stuff. So it's just kind of interesting how we sort of normalize these things within our worlds.
Yeah, and there are, if you wanted to be, let's say, a technician of yoga, let's say, and begin helping with the techniques, you have a group of people that are near you, around you, and have no clue of what yoga is. It's wonderful. It's super helpful. But to receive the title, I think of a teacher, and then later on even a professor of yoga, you need to put hours and dedication and the study and know in depth this spiritual practice and the philosophy that supports this spiritual practice, and then the practicality of how to get that into the physical body, right? So then there are different stages, but I feel like people with 200 hours, if they put themselves in their place of beginner teachers, they can help a lot of people that know nothing about yoga. It's a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, so you graduate from the Universidad de Yoga, and then do you start teaching right away, or what does sort of your career look like back then when you're 21?
Yeah, after 1 year you could begin teaching, and that's what I did, because I had no doubt. I didn't start the training to become a yoga teacher. Just my curiosity and my wanting to learn more brought me to this path. But I began teaching right away. And then in the next following 3 years, I finished my degree, which, it's not considered by the other universities as degrees. But I did not want to study anything else because I knew that I wanted yoga. So it did not make sense for me to go study something else in order to have a degree and then complete the hours with yoga. Does it make sense, Amanda, what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and back in the day, there wasn't yoga alliances and things like that, but I felt the need of having the certification and having that completion. So I did, and for 2 years I taught in that school where I also worked. Then I moved on teaching private lessons in São Paulo. And then I began a business. For 10 years, I was just teaching private lessons, going from place to place, house to house, teaching 101. And it gave me so much knowledge and so much foundation of how to work with the different bodies and different people. And financially also was a good thing, better than teaching at a yoga studio, which it still is, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. And at what point did you move to California?
Yeah, so I think, yes, it was in 2000. I decided, along with all my private students, to put together a party. Some of them initiated that so we could all come together. And this pocket of students that I had in Sao Paulo, they were very wealthy, and they said, okay, what can we do? What should we do? And I was really into, already in my training in Brazil, we were into kirtan, and the base of the training was mudra. We would initiate the practice with puja, mudra, mantra, doing some kirtan, but just clapping hands, and pranayama, kriya, techniques of purification that are in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, just using that in class. And then asana, and the last parts were yoga nidra and meditation. So it was a system composed of those 8 elements. And then I was into the music of Jayutao, and I suggested, what about if you bring someone like Jayutao and we do this concert together for everybody? So that's what happened. And in the communications of organizing how to bring Jayutao down to Brazil, we fell in love. Long story short, a year later, I was here in California with him. So that's...
Oh, what a beautiful love story.
Yeah, to here. I left all my students there, my family, and I came, which I love, and built a new community and family here. So it was in 2001. And just in the light of what, yesterday was, 9/11, I remember that day. I remember waking up that day and feeling like, oh, something is wrong. So it was right. I was very new to the country when that happened.
Wow. That must have been such, I remember it being Canadian, having that experience from I think I was 13 at the time of 9/11. And I remember my personal experience, but I can't even imagine if you were had just moved to this country for to be with your partner, and then something that tragic happens in this place that you're going to call home. That must have been a surreal experience.
Yeah. I don't remember if 9/11 was 2002 or 2003, so it was a little later, but yes.
2001.
2001, so it was that year. Wow.
Yeah, that's why I was man, you would have been fresh into the States, oh, okay, I'm creating this new life here with, your husband, and then it's crazy situation happens, and it changed the game for travel after that too, because being Canadian, we didn't need passports to cross into the US until 9/11, and vice versa too. So
yeah, it changed a lot of things. Yes. So I then had to learn how to teach in English, which was a whole other thing, because I was able to travel around, understand the basics of English, and then go to classes. And I've traveled before moving to the yoga journal conference and to take lessons in New York at the Yoga Mukti place, which I loved so much. Or back in that time, for a period, I was into Ashtanga, so I was going to Ed Stern place. So I was able to, receive teachings in yoga, in English, but to learn how to teach was a whole other thing. So I had 2 people that opened their studios for me to teach before I was like 100% with my English enough to teach. And it felt really good when that finally happened, that bridge, besides being here to be with Ajay, to have, yoga back in my life, like at that level teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that did happen to me, because are you familiar with my husband's music?
A little bit, as I was learning more about you, but yeah, a little bit, but you can tell me more.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened business-wise for me and learning curve and how to grow was that I went from teaching, which I was very happy and comfortable, one-on-ones, right? Sometimes I would do a class on a friend's studio just for a special class, but I went from that reality into teaching groups and teaching at Omega, Rhinebeck, and then teaching retreats. So it was an expansion, which I did have the foundation of the teachings, but I didn't have the experience of teaching larger groups. So with it being, exposed to that possibility, it was really nice to have the foundation I had, because I was able then to go into a bigger group of students, bigger class, and see clearly what each student needed, and then be able to offer variations. So I love teaching all level classes because of that. Because I can see that, okay, I can offer level 1, 2, and 3 variations so easily, because I created that vocabulary in my teaching before being exposed to groups.
Yeah. Wow. And did you notice much of a difference between like the yoga communities from Sao Paulo to when you moved to California? Like, was there a difference in just like the yoga, the way people were practicing, the way people were responding to the practice, or anything like that?
Yes, of course. Culturally, no? And like I said before, to me, yoga is a spiritual practice. And then to begin from that into bringing it to the body is one way, right? And what I felt when I came here, which was really, in the beginning was really nice, because I wanted a balance a little bit more. So then on the other hand, here it was like starting with the body, Iyengar and Ashtanga. It's like all physical to then get into that spiritual alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was the opposite. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. I'm always curious. I love to travel and experience other cultures. So I'm always really curious, like what the cultural differences are within the yoga practice. So that's interesting to hear, and also not super surprising. And so you're in California at this point. At what point do you and your husband create Bhakti Nova School of Yoga and Dance?
Okay, that is my my school.
Mm-hmm.
Jai, what he does is he does kirtan, and he traveled, for the past 50 years. He's been traveling around the world and sharing this art of devotional yoga, chanting. When I moved here, I thought, well, okay, Jai, you are going everywhere, so let's create for you the Kirtan Camp, which is a training that he does once a year, teaching people how to lead Kirtan. And we've been doing this now. This past summer was our 17th annual Kirtan Camp.
Wow.
And we had people from all over. Yes, from people from all over the world coming to learn from Jai, and then they go back to their communities and lead kirtans in their classes. Or we had, like in our first kirtan camp, Govindas and Radha from LA, and now they like go out and share kirtan. And we had so many people that are out there sharing kirtan right now as musicians and as a singular practice that were in our kirtan camp. So that was them. But then I wait a long time to do things that I want to do. It's just, I'm a happy kapha and I take my time. And like I said, I wanted to really have that so deeply inside of me before sharing. So I started the Bhakti Nova School of Yoga and Dance in 2002. I, fill the papers on Yoga Alliance, and then later on, maybe, I had my baby, our son, in 2005, and I recorded then just before having Ezra Pranayama CD, and I waited to offer my first training when, I think it was 2009. So look at that space, right? And what I was doing in between was teaching workshops and little trainings on how to, approach yoga from more of a devotional aspect, and also infuse your yoga with these practices that I draw from the classical Indian dance, the hastas, the mudras, and the storytelling, which is called abhinaya. So how to bring those stories of yoga, stories of bhakti yoga into your hatha yoga practice. So I was doing that more into traveling workshops and local workshops, but I didn't do my official teacher training until 2009. The aspect of the dance aspect comes from this art form that I started dancing in 97. I started in Brazil as well, called Odissi. Odissi is a classical Indian dance from the state of Odisha in India. Mm-hmm. And in its essence, is a sacred offering, is a devotional dance, and it was done inside of the temples only for centuries, until right now, just 65 years ago, came to be a classical dance, and it's performed in stages. The root and the shastras, the texts that are used are all to inspire bhaktas on how to paint, sculpture, dance, do their devotional arts based on this exact way of worshipping or holding a hand gesture to evoke a specific deity. Mm-hmm. So Bhakti Nova does both a hatha yoga practice that has the flows for the deities of the Hindu pantheon, and then Bhakti Nova as a dance school offers little choreographies based on those deities that it's drawn from the 20-minute piece, 10-minute piece, Odissi classical dances, and turning that into a simple 3 minutes, 4 minutes dance for people to do as a form of worship.
Wow, that's incredible. And I feel like this is a good time to kind of transition into the Yoga Mudras, because I know that's something that you're really passionate about and something that I know a little bit about, obviously, from my trainings, but definitely am not an expert in. And I'm curious, what was it about the Yoga Mudras that kind of drew you in? Like, how did you sort of fall in love with this aspect of the yoga practice?
I just fell in love. There is no way to explain that, right? Since the beginning, like when I started practicing yoga, I mentioned one of the practices was to do a specific mudra and then use that mudra as a seal, as outlet to plug into the energy that you were calling. Mm-hmm. Which is, pretty much part of the tantric practices, right? Like you do a mantra, a mudra, and a visualization, and that's what creates that alchemy, complete alchemy. But I approach not as a tantra practice, but as a bhakti practice. So you do the invocation of the mantra to call upon that deity, and then you do the seal to kind of like really plug into the well of that specific deity. Not only deities, but also aspects of nature and elements of nature, So you're calling those spiritual forces via hand gesture. So I used since the beginning, and combining the really magical thing for me is combining the yoga asana with the mudra, which somewhat not really new, but somewhat new, that people are learning how to do this slowly. And this book's mission is to really empower people to know how, and do so in a way that is connected to an ancient tradition, the Natya Shastras, the Abhinaya Darpana. So they are not just inventing hand gestures. They are using gestures that are meaningful to the cultural lineage of India, and that are bringing people into this source and resource of bhakti.
Right.
So how I fell in love, I don't know, I just fell in love. When I first fell in love with the dance, I saw that what they were doing with their work was really hard, but what was really fascinating for me was to watch they moving their hands, and how those hands were just transporting me into the parallel reality. And that's what made me fell in love with the dance I dance also, DC. And then now I actually postponed again and again to do this book, because I didn't want people to misuse, these gestures. So I kept, I'm not doing that. And I was just teaching to this small group of close students. And then I woke up from a dream one day saying, now is the time. Like a little seed fell on the ground, and I saw this tree growing into one hand gesture, another, and a mudra with gesture. And then when the tree got really big, the question, like, are you going to die with that? So I'm like, okay, is the time. And my intention was to help people, empower yoga teachers especially, and yoga students especially, on embellishing their yoga asana with these mudras. So when they are doing their yoga photos or teaching their yoga classes, they have a bigger vocabulary of what to use and why to use, and meaningfully how to express with the hands as well with the body.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'll make sure we can talk a little bit more about your book a little bit later on as well. And I'll make sure there's a link for it in the show notes. But I think something you touched on there that I think is so important is using the meaningfully. And I feel like one of the things as a yoga teacher that I've personally struggled with is there's elements of the practice of yoga, because it's so deep, that I don't always bring into my classes because I don't feel 100% comfortable with how to use them, how they were intended, how the ancient traditions were. And I think mudras is definitely one of them. And I would be surprised if I'm not alone with that. So I'm curious, like, as yoga teachers, what are some of the key things that we need to know about yoga mudras and how to bring them in to our classes with the asana practice?
Okay, so when we are talking here yoga mudras, we're talking about yoga mudra can be something, can be a yoga pose in the hatha yoga pradipika, and in the hatha yoga mudra are specific poses. For example, Mahamudra is a forward bend with the bandhas. So you don't do a full forward bend, you stay halfway up, you do a bandha. So that's a yoga mudra. Mm-hmm. What we will be talking about is mudras used in yoga, or mudras combined with yogasana. Does it make sense, Amanda?
Mm-hmm.
And then what I I can say is that if you're using a mudra during meditation, what you need to be attuning to is the energy of that mudra that you are using, and really know that there is no difference between the mudra and the deity or the quality that you are evoking. So, for example, if I'm doing a mudra for Shiva, and I'm seated, and I bring the back of my right hand to my left palm, and I'm not connecting the thumbs. The thumbs are resting by the base of the index fingers. That's the Shiva Bhairava mudra.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to call the energy of Shiva, and I'm going to tune into this presence that is ancient, the Adi, the primordial yogi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is both transcendental, formless, and also has many, many forms. So then I'm tuning into that, I'm evoking that, and I'm evoking the qualities of Shiva, which are transformation, which are, ending of cycles. Shiva is the exhale. Now, in the moment that I touch my thumbs and bring my thumbs up a little bit, creating this little wheel between my thumbs, I'm no longer doing Shiva mudra. I'm doing Buddha mudra, which in yoga is called dhyana mudra, meditation mudra, but it's a mudra that is connected to Buddha Shakyamuni. So then the energy is completely different, and the most important thing is to tune into that different energy, which you may not do necessarily. I'm just doing examples right now. You're not necessarily going to do a Shiva mudra and then followed by a Buddha mudra. You know what I mean? But so you know that each specific finger gesture, hand changing, will call a different energy. And then just to continue this example, like, okay, if I instead decide to place my left hand on top of my right hand, and the hands are resting on the lap, and my thumbs are by the base of my index finger, that is no longer Shiva mudra, that is Shakti mudra, Shakti Bhairavi. So the left hand on top calls for a different energy, which is the energy of creation, nature, the mother of everything, the matrix, the creatrix. So then you're tuning to that reality and the realm of manifestation, and you are evoking that quality, or revering entire creation that is manifestation of this beautiful Mahamaya.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely all makes sense. So I guess a key part of this then is understanding the deities and how the mudras relate to them, and then what sort of energy you're evoking. So there has to be kind of that baseline understanding of what each yoga mudra means in order to bring it into the physical practice appropriately. Is that right?
Yeah, if in meditation. Now, one of the things that I am trying to bring forth is the understanding that then there are the hastas of the dance that are more like bhakti yoga, telling stories. There is this bringing through, which is expressed via the hands, which turns into a whole other reality of abhinaya, storytelling. So, for example, we're just visualizing right now, I come into Shiva Natarajasana, right? Pose, Natarajasana. Then I know that Shiva has this connection to the element of fire. Shiva holds a drum in one fire, and the other in one hand, the drum in the other hand. So when I do Shiva dancing pose, I can bring that mudra of fire, which is Alapadma, or I can bring the mudra of the drum to my hand, because then the composition of that pose with the right gesture, hand gesture, will be beautiful, and also will be complete and correct.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. Super, super interesting stuff. Hey, yogis, we're just taking a quick little break from the podcast to talk about PunchPass. PunchPass is everything you need and nothing you don't at a price you can afford. Their software is simple yet powerful, efficient and easy to use. The team at PunchPass knows what it's like to run a small business like yours, because they are a small business too. PunchPass understands your challenges, and they take pride in delivering great service. When you're with PunchPass, you're not alone. They lift you up and support the connections you have with your client community. They listen, they care, and they're here to support you. So if you're looking for support from easy-to-use software with great people behind it, visit punchpass.com/MBOM to try PunchPass free for 2 weeks. I am super excited to be paired with PunchPass because I think that there's a lot of softwares out there, and sometimes it's really hard to choose what's right. And for me as a small business, I'm looking for something that understands my needs as a small business. And that's exactly what PunchPass does. They have great pricing options, they have great people, and overall, they're just a really great option if you're a yoga teacher or a small business looking for a great software. So once again, head on over to punchpass.com/MBOM to try PunchPass free for 2 weeks. All right, now back to the podcast episode.
And so I guess I'm curious, like if yoga teachers don't really know much about yoga mudras, like where is a good place to start with learning about this and starting to add it into your own personal practice and then of course your classes?
Well, that's my book, and I know I want to talk about that, but it is the truth. That's why I put it like this. And this book is so easy to understand because I want it to be like something that people would see it, get it, and then read how to. So I have little children that just sit down, open the book, and they are doing this combined poses and mudras. And what I've done, I collected in here my favorite and the most meaningful, like the 101 plus, I would say 108 collection of the right and the meaningful combination of those. I can give you a library of maybe 25 other books where you're going to find parts of things, and even the Natya Shastra and Abhinaya Darpana, if you read that, you're not really going to understand because it doesn't come with the image. And for me, it took me years and years to understand how one mudra can be used in so many different ways. So in this book, I summarized and I put it together in a way that is very easy to learn. And I think it's a good start. It's actually more than a good start. It has a lot of information there. It's like years and years of work. And you can start with one mudra a month. You know what I mean? Really dive into that and learn the differences between ritualistic yoga and then how to use the mudras in a ritualistic way, and then also to just embellish. So it will be a good source. Yoga and Art of Mudras.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll make sure that there's a link for that in the show notes. And I don't know if this is a silly question or not, but I'm curious, like with mudras, you just mentioned like, maybe have one and practice it for a month. Are mudras the type of thing where you would bring like more than one into a meditation or more than one into a practice? Or is it kind of like you choose one and you're really trying to evoke that specific energy with like one specific mudra?
Yeah, there is no silly questions, first of all the questions are so wonderful. This is a wonderful question. I guess if you are new to it, you bring one at a time, right? And also, if you know what you're composing with that, then you can bring more. For example, let's say I'm doing a practice when I want to focus on the energy of a generosity. So I'm doing this gesture, one of the gestures of Buddha, just the right palm facing up. And that is the gesture of a generosity. So I can focus on that, or I can maybe later add to that a gesture of offering, which is a pushpa-put. I wish I could be showing you the mudras, which is like you make a bowl with both hands, and that is an offering. And you can create compositions, and this is what we do in the dance, and that's what I do in a yoga asana practice. I begin and I pull a strand of mudras that are connected, to, a mood or a quality or a deity, and I keep them together in the groups instead of going all over the place with them. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for answering that question. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah. And but I say use one a month, because then you really like, is learning something. It's taking one repetition, learn by repetition, right? And then also is a relationship. So you develop a relationship with the mudra, and maybe you will have insights that are of your own personal experience coming from that maybe never came to me, because it's not in my healing process or something like that. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about your book, and I know you kind of talked a little bit about what it's about, but I'm curious, kind of from like the business side of things, I guess, like what was it actually like to write a book? Like from this point of like getting this hint of inspiration, having something that you want to write, sitting down, writing it, and then actually like getting it out into the world. Like, what was that experience like?
It was a lot of commitment. It took a lot from me, as far as saying no to a lot of things, as far as just spending hours sitting versus going out and having fun, right?
Like
So,
doing things. It's like
yeah.
right versus like go hang out with friends.
Yes. And I am a wife, a mother. I have regular classes going on. I didn't stop any of the processes to write a book. So it was like it was a huge amount of work. And by the end of the writing part of it, then there was the photo part of it, I was exhausted. I was like, oh my God, this is really exhausting, but it's worth it. I think unless you're dedicated, you take that time off and you dedicate just for that. As a writer, maybe the experience is different, but it takes focus, it takes commitment, and that is all that I can say. Um, and it was like that. I knew I had to write this book. I didn't want to write this book. And then I knew I had to write this book, and I wanted to contribute to yoga. And in the process of writing this book, I fell in love with the work itself and felt deep gratitude to what it was stored inside of me, and to the source of yoga. So it was a great labor of love and service, because I wanted the next generations. I've been teaching yoga now for almost 30 years. And I wanted the next generations to have this body of work. And when people are teaching, which now is very common, people are teaching bhakti flow, but they have no idea of how to bring the bhakti into their yoga asanas. They sing a little bit in the beginning, sing a little bit in the end, say some things that are more like from different traditions, let's just say, read a poetry, but they don't know how to actually embody those cues. And I wanted to give that to the next Bhakti Hatha generation.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, congrats on releasing that and having that commitment. I feel like sometimes people think about like, oh, writing a book, like I'll go like to a beautiful Caribbean island and I'll drink coconut water and sit in the sun and find inspiration. But I think the reality for most of us is that like you have to power through doing that in your real life, like with your children and with your work and with your partner and with your friends who want to see you and stuff like that. So definitely not an easy thing that you've done, but you did it. So yeah, that's amazing. And congratulations for that.
If you ask me for advice to anybody that wants to do any project, right? But book is like a huge commitment, but it's doable. But, a blog, a manual, a yoga manual. Every time I teach a new training, I like to write a new manual because I like to study and I like to spend hours with my books and with figuring out how to make my teaching more effective, more helpful, So it takes focus. And it's very easy to have an idea. It's very hard to sustain that idea. So it takes, tapasya, really. And then to bring it into fruition, into completion, it's really about service. When you think it's just about yourself, then it's harder. But when you think about others and what you're bringing forth is to support others as well, then it gives you the spiritual strength to accomplish, to finish, to complete.
Amazing. I love that. And so you've had, quite a dynamic career from, studying and teaching yoga to running privates to learning to teach in another language, opening a business in, a country that was not your home country, running trainings, writing a book. So I'm curious, what are some of the biggest business lessons that you've learned throughout your career?
I said that, and I want to say again now, in this perfect moment, in the perfect question, not rush, to not rush. Like all of this that you described, I did in a period of 25 years, right? Close to 30 years. So do not rush into the next level. Just be where you are, grow as deep as you can into what you have with the skills that you have, and then you can reach up a little higher, further, a little more. What I see is that, especially right now with so many of the teachings, they are just available with one click, right? And people are just going the next, the next, the next, the next. So there is a lot of scattered energy and scattered direction. You start going north, but then you also can go south. You can go northeast. You can northwest. You have so many possibilities. So to focus in one direction at a time. That's why I said one mudra at a month. So that's my main, not just move it slow and deeper. So you actually have that planted in you before you share. You actually have that really strong inside of you. And when a teaching is practiced and you experience that teaching becomes yours. It's not yours until you don't fully have spent time with it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I really love
that.
Yeah, I love that reminder. And I think it's a good reminder for me personally. I love what you said about like going deep with something as opposed to like we do something and then we continually look for that next thing. So it's like we gain a lot of different information, but we're not going as deep as I think, maybe people used to before the internet. But I do feel like we live in a society where it's like, everything is one click away, which is a super beautiful thing in terms of accessing information and being able to learn. But it's also makes us like want things so quickly. And I feel like there is, I love that you mentioned that, everything I said happened for you over 25 to 30 years. And for those people listening who are newer in their career, and also a reminder for me, it's like, we have to continuously balance that learning with that doing and be patient as we grow. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for saying, I tell my students, my advice for my students when they finish there, I do two different ways, my training. One is 200 hours. The other one, which I did last year's, were 500 hours, meaning I start with a 0 and we end on 5. And that's how I like the most. So I don't get someone from a 200 that has no idea of what I've done in coming to the 300. Make sense? So what I tell my students is like this. The formula that I suggest is start with the privates and actually like teach your neighbors, people near you that you can charge very little. Even if you charge them 25 is a great deal for them. And you probably will get more than you would get if you go to a student where you are nobody and you don't have a minimum like that. You know what I mean? Then you gradually when you feel stronger, you teach and you charge 40, and gradually you charge 60 when you feel like you are a little more deeper. And I'm talking about a fresh 200 hours or 500 hours teacher, right? So you're just starting to teach. And then once you have plenty of private students, then you go and see if you can put together a community class. And then you offer that, to a smaller group of people. And then slowly your vision is to grow and expand. And after 2 to 3 years of teaching yoga, you can do your first workshop. So that's my advice. And I know that the world is asking us to do faster things and to do more, but I feel like those that come to me, I can only teach from my own personal experience and for what I believe it's true. So then that's my suggestion, to grow slowly, but continuously. Don't stop. Keep growing, keep perfecting, deepening your own practice, and then bringing more to what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that. Do you have any other business lessons that you want to share today with listeners that you've learned, over the last couple decades of doing this?
Yeah. And I want to talk again about this, everything away, you just can learn from one click, because what I feel it's happening right now, business wise also, and spiritual wise, and, in your yoga teaching, you can do so many different things. So it's like you make a little hole here to find water, you don't find, and then you go and make another hole, and then you will make another hole, and then you make another hole, and you ended up not finding water, and you're looking around you and you have all these holes around you, right? Instead of continuously digging into one hole until you find in that depth the how do you call in English, the
well?
The well, yeah. Or a vein of water, that will bring you to the well.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we could be doing so many things, it's true, and then you start learning one thing and then you go into the next. But I think that what could bring prosperity to a person at first is to dedicate to one aspect. So what is your forte, and you dedicate yourself to that. And not only what is your forte, but what is your call and your dharma, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we go into spiritual teachings, it's best to fail doing your own dharma, that's in the Gita, than to succeed in the dharma of someone else, right? Mm-hmm. So to be truth to what you have to offer. And I always felt like it's best to bring little waters to the little plants and feel fulfilled with that, than to want to bring the big waters into the big sources and then don't feel fulfilled. Because our profession as a yoga teacher is beautiful, but is we will be successful perhaps materially, but the main goal is to be successful spiritually. And then I think when there is that satisfaction, all the other things will come on their own time.
Yeah. That makes me sort of think about, like, I guess figuring out the balance of as a yoga teacher, as however you identify yourself, spiritual healer, how you balance like the yoga or the money side of things. Can you touch on that briefly? Kind of how you make sure that you've got this like strong spiritual practice and that you're still coming from that place of like what the yoga is authentically about, but also, when you're charging for something, making sure that you're getting that exchange monetarily.
Always. You can't teach I don't teach for free. I go and I help others with money that when I can, or organizations, but I don't teach yoga for free. I do give lots of discounts in our kirtan camps and my trainings. I make it possible and available, but it's necessary to have an exchange because it is our career, right? And we pay rent. We have we have a material life to sustain. So we need to have that material support. There is no doubt on that. I've been a yoga teacher only for all of those years, so it's been working for me, and I know that right now it's a different reality to get your business going. It's a lot. I worry about my son. My son is 14. Like, oh, he's a musician. How is he gonna do? Because it's such a different time right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Than it was in the past. But all that you can do is, follow a few of the business suggestions that I'm sure you have in your work, and you can offer people to do, and then do your practice, and then do the best you can to balance all of those parts, right? To the personal practice and then the business practice, and then see if it in reality is working for you. If not, then you can complement with extra works, different work, because what I see right now is a lot of young teachers very frustrated and simply stopping teaching yoga. And in the beginning, it's a little harder, but you have to keep on doing and balancing your personal practice and the business the best you can, the business aspect of it, and then see the reality of what's coming back to you. I do many different things to keep that balance, to make it work.
Yeah.
All within the yoga. So I will teach a workshop. I will do an extra private lesson. I will, I'm always trying to create the flow by working. So I don't have the experience of that money coming to me without work. So I'm always doing some kind of work, but I try to make it as creative and as authentic that I can. So then I am feeling really good about it in my heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. There's a couple things that kind of stand out to me from what you said, and I think one of them is, and this is, I've kind of noticed this sort of trend in other conversations that I've had for the podcast, but I feel like when we're like firmly rooted within our own personal practice, it becomes a lot easier to understand that energetic exchange is monetary and that we do need to make money. So I feel like, being firmly rooted in our own spiritual practice is a really important element of that. And then the other thing that you said that really stands out to me that you mentioned before is, I think that there's a lot of people who they see the people who are successful or making good money within the yoga space and they want that immediately. But I think that as new teachers, we need to remind ourselves that, like with your career, like overnight success didn't just happen. You've worked at this both with your personal practice and professionally for 25 years to get where you are, and we need to remind ourselves that with that continued work that we put into what we're doing, our income is going to continue to grow, but there does have to be sort of an element of patience with it, and also knowing that you have to put the work and the study into it.
You have to it doesn't, unless it does. Which might be the case for a few people. That's why I say, unless I tell my students, unless you are a superstar, and we will see. But most of the time, it requires work and dedication, and coming back to the source to drink from. So then, when you give, it's abundant. And what I see, unfortunately, is that a lot of new yoga teachers, they get into that phase of learning, practicing, getting so enthusiastic, and then they go to work with yoga, and it's so frustrating and so upsetting that they kind of stop practicing, which then becomes a círculo vicioso, a vicious cycle, right? Yeah. Because so let me tell you about Lakshmi. Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance, she likes movement. So she likes action. She operates in the Rajoguna. So if something is not happening and you kind of like get stuck and go and try the same teachings, the same offerings, but in a completely slightly different way. And also don't let that energy of stagnation get to your practice, because that will not support the rest, the other parts. Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I love that it kind of ties back to how we can use like the goddesses or the deities and the mudras also that go with them to kind of call in the things that we're looking to achieve in our business. So that's pretty cool to see that go full cycle.
Yeah. I just yesterday I taught a class. I'm doing a year-long training for a group of women here. It's called the Yogini's Path, and I taught a class, and I wrote this whole page for it, and I have something in the end that I want to read for you. Okay. It's part of a Rumi poem, and it says, "Work, keep digging your well. Don't think about getting off from work. Water is there somewhere. Submit to a daily practice. Your loyalty to that is a ring on the door." Rumi.
I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
I can send you that written if you want me to.
Yeah, I would love that.
Rumi, from the book Essential Rumi. So I'll send you that.
Amazing. Thank you. I have loved this conversation, Nubia. It's been so amazing learning from you and getting to chat with you. Is there any other, lessons or tips or anything that you'd like to share with listeners today before we wrap up?
No, I think we touched the main, most important parts, and I want to thank you so much for this opportunity again. I'm so glad, and our conversation could go another 1 hour, but let's say goodbye for now. And I want to invite everybody listening right now to really take a moment to close your eyes and place the backs of your hands on your lap if you're sitting on a chair or on the floor, and connect to the fingers in a way that you feel that you're holding something really precious on your hands. Take a deep breath in, and then as you exhale, feel like water-like energy is moving from your heart to your hands. And we're going to do that again now, inhaling and feeling that we're pulling the water from the earth into the heart, and then exhaling towards the hands, energy like water, like water moving towards the hand. Then one more deep breath from the depth of the earth. Bring this water-like, nourishing-like energy up to the heart, and exhaling from the heart, moving this water like light to the hands. So, holding something that is special and spiritual, bring that light, that water to your eyes, your hands to your eyes. And may you see clear what you need to see so you can do what you need to do.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Back to the heart. Thank you so much, Amanda. I will look forward to know when this is out, and I want to make myself available if anybody wants to write me an email. Will you have that information, or should I say now?
Yeah, you can share that, and then website, social media, anywhere where you'd like people to go to find you, and then I'll make sure all that's in the show notes as well.
Okay, my website is simple, but my name is a little harder, nubiateixeira.com. And my email address, very easy, nubiayoga@gmail.com. And the name of the book is Yoga and the Art of Mudras.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Nubia. This has been a really wonderful conversation.
Okay, have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too.
All right, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Nubia, and I hope that you learned as much as I did about mudras. I know I certainly came away with a lot of great takeaways from this episode, and it was really inspiring to hear some really tangible things about how to include mudras into my classes. So for me, I'm definitely starting with more the personal practice side of things, and then once I'm a bit more comfortable with it, I'll be integrating it more into my classes. So I hope that you are all as inspired as I am coming away from this interview. As always, you can find all the notes and links that we talked about in this episode on the website at mbmyoga.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga, and you can join the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can always email me at info@mbmyoga.com. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.